Right, Diane, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Diane. Thank you so much for making the time, and our greetings to Hervé, who we think is sitting next to you. Without further ado, I will give you the floor, and thank you again for doing this.
Thank you very much, Stefan. I'd just like to say a few words about the situation in the Central African Republic. As many of you will know, we've seen an outbreak of violence in the past few months in the eastern sector of the Central African Republic. And that violence has been continuing in the last few weeks. And unfortunately, we've seen a number of attacks which have resulted in a large number of civilian casualties. These have been centered in three main towns. One is in Benghazi, another is in Alindao, and in Bria as well now. I'd just like to give you a sitrep of the situation in those three main population centres, and also talk a little bit about the broader situation within the Central African Republic. Within Benghazi, as many of you will know, just outside Benghazi, we very sadly lost 5 peacekeepers from our force around the 8th of May. They were killed either on or just after the 8th of May. We lost 4 Cambodians and 1 Moroccan, and we subsequently also lost another Moroccan. They were on that occasion surrounded by a large group of anti-Balaka. The anti-Balaka subsequently reinforced. They attacked the town of Benghazi. Now, Benghazi is a town which until now has been extremely calm. There have been very good intercommunal relations. This is the first time it has seen a major outbreak of violence of this scale. The attack was a very cynical one. The attack was divided into 2 halves. There was a major attack against our base, which pinned down our peacekeepers. There was then also a major attack against the civilian population, particularly the Muslim population in the center of Benghazi. We managed gradually to regain control. We got reinforcements through, but again they were severely hampered with a large number of trees placed across the road, which they then had to negotiate over several kilometers to get into Benghazi. Bridges were burnt as well. The situation in Benghazi now is beginning to return to calm. We are gradually regaining control of Benghazi. The situation overnight was calm. I was in contact with our field office. The numbers of casualties are gradually emerging. Unfortunately, we're putting the casualty, the death toll, at around 115 so far, but this may rise further. We know the local Red Cross has buried 78 bodies. We know that there are more also, and so we are, so these are credible non-UN sources that we are relying on. I can tell you that UN peacekeepers are continuing to conduct patrols. We are reinforcing in Benghazi as well. And the force commander has been there today to make sure that we have the right kind of dispositions to be able to respond to the threats that there are on the ground. I should say that we have also been engaging with local authorities, with local members of civil society, and the Cardinal Zapailinga, has also, from Bangui, has been down there for the last few days and has been leading mediation efforts there to try to calm the situation. And that does seem to be having a positive impact. But the situation remains extremely fragile and we are taking precautions. We also had a major situation in the town of Alindao. Our forces, we had reports that anti-Balaka and UPC, one of the ex-Seleka groups, clashed in Alindao on the 9th of May, leaving around 11 fighters dead. We diverted one of our quick reaction forces from another town where they were attending to an alert, and they managed to get there on the 11th of May. There were in the meantime other reinforcements that were sent there as well to prevent further clashes. The number of dead in Alindao is difficult to estimate. We know of 38 casualties. Some reports are alleging up to 100, but we have to take such reports with caution. We've seen in other incidents where there has been a very large number of casualties and deaths reported, and in fact the number has been significantly lower. So we have to be careful. But we do have a large number of displaced persons at the Catholic mission in Alindao, around 8,500. I should say within Benghazi as well, we have 7,200 displaced persons within the town, and 3,000 refugees have fled into DRC. And I should say that it is in that northern part of DRC, which is currently also being affected by the Ebola crisis. Separately, we have a situation in Bria. Bria is a town which saw significant clashes at the end of November last year. We've had another eruption, this time within the FPRC anti-Balaka coalition, and there seems to be fighting between those two wings of that coalition. It started on the 14th of May with minor incidents, continued for a couple of days, and then finally there was a much larger explosion. We have around we think around 15,000 displaced people within the town now. They are gathered around our base. We already had 10,000 around there, so around an additional 5,000 or so have gathered around our base. We are continuing to patrols, and we are engaging with civil society leaders, with religious leaders, to seek to to calm the situation. There are also tensions elsewhere as a result of these attacks. Obviously, within Bangui, which is the main population centre, there have been deep concerns by the Muslim population at this targeting of the Muslim population in Benghazi. There are reports elsewhere also of tensions, and our field officers and our staff are engaging actively with civil society, with political leaders at local and national level to seek to calm these tensions. And I should also mention that we've got continuing confrontations in the West related to the seasonal movement of cattle herders, the transhumants. This has been going on, these confrontations have been going on for several months now, and they do continue. Why have we got these problems now? We think that part of the answer is that there is a continuation of a struggle between armed groups. There was, as I say, a coalition between the FPRC and other ex-Seleka groups and certain elements of the anti-Balaka against another ex-Seleka group. That created a lot of clashes and a lot of tension, and indeed a large number of deaths as well. But the latest upsurge in violence is different from what we've seen before. First of all, as I say, Benghazi has been quiet until now. It doesn't seem to be. This is not a reflection of this particular targeting of one particular ex-Seleka faction. There's been a targeting of a MINUSCA base deliberately in a major way, including using some fairly serious weaponry. And also tactics of blocking reinforcements as well. And the kind of weapons which are being used, we've seen not only AK-47s, and that's, again, anti-Balaka wouldn't normally use those kind of weapons, but also some heavier weapons too, mortars, for example, grenade launchers too, and it looks as if somebody has been financing this. So I would say that we're seeing a different kind of tactics now, and indeed in Bria, what we are seeing at present seems to be a breakdown of the coalition that was in place up until now. So it's a very fragile situation. It's a volatile situation. I can assure you that MINUSCA and our UN agency partners are responding on the ground. We are stretched, there's no doubt about it, but we are still being extremely active with all the resources that we have. We're also very conscious of the humanitarian needs. We have flights going into. We had a flight going into Benghazi today. We have resupplies going into Bria, and also we're getting supplies into Alindao. And Alindao is a particularly remote location, so it is difficult to know exactly what has happened there. I should just say, Central African Republic is a country which is emerging from an extremely deep crisis, 2013, 2014. The area in which we're operating, what we call the eastern sector, covers about 40% of the country. It is a vast area. It's larger than the UK. It has a population of around 450,000, so very thinly populated. It has no paved roads whatsoever. It has very, very weak infrastructure. So, of course, moving around and being able to respond quickly remains a challenge, particularly with the onset of the rainy season now. The weather is sometimes against us in our capacity to respond. But we are certainly responding robustly, and we are keeping the situation very closely under review and indeed taking action, putting operations in place to bring the situation under control. But I should say it remains fragile, it remains tense.
Diane, thank you very much. We'll go to questions. Edie?
Thank you very much. On behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association, my name is Edith Lederer. I'm the Associated Press correspondent here. I have two questions following up on what you said. First of all, why this sudden targeting of MINUSCA camps with heavy weapons? And does this upsurge show that the ethnic rivalry between the Christian and Muslim communities is still as bad and possibly getting worse than it was several years ago? Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Diane.
Yeah. Why the sudden targeting of MINUSCA? I think you have to remember that we're in an extremely weak state here. And the only forces on the ground in much of the country are MINUSCA forces. There's no armed forces, except for in very few small contingents in certain locations. And in many parts of the country, there are no police or gendarmerie either. So de facto, MINUSCA is the only force. So we are the ones who are standing between the armed groups and whatever they are trying to achieve. I would also say this is not the first time that MINUSCA has been targeted. The first time we were targeted was actually in early October 2014, just after the mission started. We were the subject of an ambush in Bangui, which marked the start of a number of days of serious violence in Bangui. Indeed, in other incidents in Bangui, we have been targeted. Our vehicles have been shot at. We've been stoned as well. And I think it's again because, unlike perhaps in certain other peacekeeping missions, I can think of DRC and Mali, for example, there are very few local forces on the ground. We represent the forces of law and order, if you like, and the forces that are standing up to those who want to sow mayhem and havoc in the country. But you're right, this is of a different order of magnitude, what happened in the last few days in Benghazi, and particularly the nature of the weapons, as I mentioned, that we know the anti-Balaka were using, and that is of particular concern. So it points to a more sophisticated set of planning behind what happened. And of course, we've got to work out exactly what went on behind that. In terms of, does this show renewed ethnic tension between Christians and Muslims? It's a bit more complex than that. Certainly, it is deeply worrying that the Muslim community should have been attacked in this way. But as I say, we did until recently, and it does seem to be breaking down now, have this rather unholy alliance, if you like, between the anti-Balaka, largely non-Muslim, and the ex-Salafah, which is largely Muslim, of course, or certain elements of both sides. And that does seem to be breaking down. And certainly the specific targeting of the Muslim community in Benghazi is deeply worrying. There are many on both sides, within the Christian community, within the Muslim community, who are continuing very strongly to work for peace and are doing all that they can to prevent the situation from worsening. And I would really like to laud their efforts. They're making an extraordinary contribution to trying to regain peace in the country. I would also point out that within Benghazi itself, there are other ethnic complications, tensions, if you like, between rival ethnicities, which don't necessarily follow religious lines, and that is also helping to fuel the conflict there. So it's a complicated situation. It's not as simple as just a Christian-Muslim split, if you like. And indeed, the broader conflict within the Central African Republic is due to a number of reasons. A sense of alienation, a sense that Bangui, the government in Bangui for too many years has forgotten the broader population out in the region, so there is that sense of neglect, if you like, which is also fueled tensions within the CAR. There is this seasonal movement of cattle herders, and that, I mean, as we've seen elsewhere in Africa, that can provoke conflicts, which are generally largely contained, but in a broader situation of conflict, it can really provoke further outbreaks of violence. So it's a complicated picture as to why violence has broken out, and it goes beyond ethnic rivalry. I should also mention, of course, control of resources is a very important factor. We have diamonds in this region, we have gold in this region, there's a large coffee trade, as well as the cattle trade as well. And so these are all factors which add to the mix, which provoke the tensions, and mean that some people see that they profit more from violence than they do from peace.
Thank you. Carol?
Hi, I just wanted to clarify, so was the Benghazi attack carried out by Anti-Balaka? Because you seem to suggest that it's a different animal than in the other cases. And when you mentioned that there might have been financing because of the weaponry involved, would you indicate whether that might be external to Central African Republic? Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Anti-Balaka is a very broad movement. It's a very large movement. It's the largest of all the armed group coalitions, if you like. I mean, our estimates put it at something like possibly 85,000, something like that. It's divided into a number of factions. And of course, there are self-defense groups, which are also local self-defense groups. The Anti-Balaka grew up in many cases, in many places, as a community self-defense group against the arrival of the ex-Seleka. So those are its origins. So it's hard to know exactly which elements of the Anti-Balaka. We certainly think that these are elements close to the Anti-Balaka, and there seem to be some elements who come from outside of Benghazi, from outside of the region as well. Yes, we would characterize this as an attack by Anti-Balaka, but noting also that there are other factions of the Anti-Balaka, and the National Coordination Office of the Anti-Balaka has actually condemned this attack and indeed really disowned this as being an Anti-Balaka attack. So we have to bear that in mind as well, and indeed the Anti-Balaka, the major portion of the Anti-Balaka say that they remain committed to the DDR process. That is also an important factor to remember. In terms of the financing, there's no reason to think of external sources. We don't rule anything out. All we know is what we've seen on the ground, that these are well-armed elements, and that they're not the normal kinds of weapons that we have traditionally associate with Anti-Balaka, although many of them are also carrying traditional weapons as well, knives and such.
Thank you. Matthew?
Thanks a lot. Matthew Lee, Inner City Press, on behalf of the Free UN Coalition for Access. Thanks a lot for the briefing. I wanted to know if you could, I'd asked here, and I was told to ask, I guess, local, so I'm going to ask you. How did it work in Benghazi when people pulled out? What was the UN's role in kind of negotiating it? There were various accounts saying that they had agreed to pull out. One of them on BBC said that they agreed to pull out if the UN would stop firing, and made some reference to the UN taking sides. There's discussion of this Cardinal Dieudonné Zapalinga. But what exactly, who in the UN system was part, did the UN play a mediating role, or was its military activity actually one of the things being negotiated in that process? And then separately, there are these new reports of sexual abuse by the Ugandan troops that were in CAR looking for Joseph Kony that have come out. And I just wondered, if with the UN presence there, what's your awareness, what's MINUSCA's awareness of those charges, and is there any possibility for accountability given the history of external troops' abuses in CAR? Thanks.
Yeah. Right. In terms of the UN, obviously, it had an impact. The fact that we were directly targeted and our base was directly targeted in Benghazi had an impact on our response. I should also say, though, that we had a number of people fleeing to our base, displaced, and so we had to look after them. I can tell you that we certainly remained very much engaged with the local authorities and with the local population. And we have remained active in all of those efforts. So there is, and also indeed have supported the work of the Cardinal. Obviously, sometimes people see things from different points of view depending on what they've seen on the ground. And sometimes people aren't, fully au fait aware of what might be happening in a different part of a theatre of operations. And so, it's difficult to draw conclusions, I think, from comments that might have been made. But I can tell you that we are very much supporting the work of the religious platform, and they have been a force for good in trying to secure reconciliation between communities. And indeed, we believe that the Cardinal has a very, very important role to play. He comes from Benghazi. He's a respected member of the community, but I should say that he himself has been threatened in Benghazi as well. So he is a very brave man, and we are full of admiration for his efforts and very much supportive of all efforts, indeed, which are seeking to calm tensions and to mediate between the sides and to remove those armed elements from Benghazi. In terms of the UPDF attacks, the allegations of sexual exploitation and abuse, indeed, yes, MINUSCA was aware of that, and indeed it was our human rights team that first alerted, certainly produced a report on that in the middle of last year. There was messaging to the Ugandan permanent delegation in Geneva about that. I'm not quite sure where things stand at the moment, and we have sent a letter from here as well to follow up on that to the Ugandan Minister of Foreign Affairs. So that is something that we are certainly aware of, and indeed, we have compiled a report on that. I can let you have more details on that as to where things stand precisely at the moment.
Great, thank you. Rosalind?
Hi, Rosalind Jordan with Al Jazeera English. Thank you for the briefing. And I think I should express on behalf of all of us our condolences for the loss of your peacekeepers. Can you describe the morale of the peacekeepers, and perhaps equally, if not more important, the morale of people, particularly in Benghazi? How worried are they for their safety? How concerned are they that the UN is doing all that it can to protect them from these attacks? Thank you.
Well, starting with the morale in Benghazi, I mean, inevitably, people in Benghazi are absolutely traumatized by what has happened. It is an appalling loss of life. It is an appalling, cruel, extremely cruel set of attacks. And we utterly, utterly condemn the kind of tactics that have been used on the population in Benghazi. Nobody should be under any doubt as to that. It is utterly, utterly contemptible what has happened there. And obviously, it is something that, the next step is what are we doing to try to secure the situation? We are certainly, we're patrolling, we're gradually taking control of the town. We're very conscious of the vulnerability of the 7,200 displaced people within the town near to the cathedral. I should say we have also helped to regroup people from large numbers, hundreds of people from the Muslim area, from other areas into a more central area as well. And we are helping to facilitate humanitarian access and humanitarian supplies to that area. That said, there are tensions still, including in that large number of people displaced. So it is something, the situation remains extremely fragile, and we need to be very vigilant for that. But it's something that we're watching day by day. And indeed, the main thing to do is to try to persuade people to stop using violence. And that is why we are so strongly supporting the mediation efforts, not just in Benghazi, but indeed in Bria and elsewhere as well. In terms of morale within MINUSCA, I'll be honest, of course, it's appalling when we lose this many peacekeepers. We've lost 6 peacekeepers in the last week. And that is a terrible thing to happen. It's a terrible thing to happen to any contingent. It's a terrible thing to happen to any mission. And so morale has inevitably not been strengthened by that. But I would say that generally, I think that we all recognise that the Central African Republic remains in an extremely fragile state. What we saw last year, the general calm around the elections, was actually abnormal rather than normal. We have to remember this is a country which is coming out of an extremely severe crisis. What happened in 2013, 2014 has left many people very traumatized. We also still have 14 active armed groups on the ground. They're not all active, but some of them certainly are. And some of them are intent, and some of the leaders within those armed groups, some of the factions of those armed groups, are still intent on wreaking havoc. So let's not forget where the blame lies. It is incumbent on everybody to persuade those armed groups to stop fighting. And we've been talking to political parties, we've been talking to civil society leaders, encouraging everybody to join in that general effort, that broad effort to put pressure on them. Because that is one of the things that really came up very strongly in the people's will to vote, in the participation in the elections, in the Bangui Forum that preceded them, was a wish to see the end of conflict and also the end of impunity. And we are working to support the end of impunity. So we are working, for example, to help set up the Special Criminal Court. We're working in support of the International Criminal Court as well. We have been helping to support the redeployment of magistrates and judges around the country, prosecutors around the country. We're working to support the national legal system as well. We're also, our human rights division is about to publish a major mapping report which is going to detail the history of human rights abuses in this country from 2003, which is when the jurisdiction of the Special Criminal Court starts, until the end of 2015 as well. Now, I mean, the jurisdiction doesn't stop then, but that's when the report goes to. We had to put a deadline somewhere. And that is going to shed a lot of light and remind a lot of people of just what has happened in this country over a long period of time, not just in the last couple of years. So this is a country which has known decades and decades of conflict, decades and decades of abuses. It's gradually now got a chance to come out. It needs sort of restoration of democratic rule. It's a gradual strengthening of the authority of the state. It's a gradual building up of the institutions. But given where the Central African Republic have fallen, this is going to take time. This is not a matter of a few months or even probably a couple of years. It's going to be a long process. But I would say, within the UN peacekeeping, we have a lot of very experienced people here. We have a lot of very experienced soldiers, very experienced police. And we know that the United Nations is always given the most difficult problems in the world. And this is one such. I mean, it's very unusual for a country to have a UN peacekeeping mission. We all recognize that. It's because it's an exceptionally difficult situation that we have a peacekeeping mission. And we know that we will be facing setbacks. We will also be facing progress. I mean, extraordinary progress has been made in this country, but it remains extremely fragile. And what we are seeing at the moment is, without doubt, a setback. But there will be, further progress. There will be a lift coming out of this period, and there will then be further progress as well. I think sometimes it's necessary to look back to see how far you've come. And I think that's an important message that I would give to anybody who's observing the Central African Republic. But that's not to say that we don't remain ever vigilant. And we remain here, we remain robust, we are absolutely determined that we are going to contribute to the restoration of peace in this country. Thank you.
Great. Carol, one last question, and then we'll let Diane go.
Just a quick follow-up. I'm wondering how many troops now are in Benghazi, because you mentioned beefing up the patrols, and whether or not that's going to go up or down.
Yeah, I can't give you the exact figure, but it's several hundred. Obviously, we don't necessarily want to release all our operational details. I can say that, we obviously have troops in reserve. We do try to ensure that we can respond quickly. The picture does move. It changes from day to day, but I can assure you that we are reinforcing. We have reinforced in Benghazi.
Thank you very much. Diane, thank you so much for your taking the time to speak to us. And Hervé, thank you for making this happen. And best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.